So, what exactly is AP Lang? Chances are, if you're asking that question, you are either a brand new AP Lang student, or maybe you're thinking about taking the class in the future. Either way, you've come to the right place. If we haven't met yet, hi, my name is Coach Hall. I'm an AP Lang teacher from Arkansas. And here on my channel, Coach Hall Writes, I create student-friendly AP Lang tutorial videos. So if you are an AP Lang student, please be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. That way you don't miss any future videos. And if you have any questions about AP Lang, I've been on YouTube since 2019, so be sure to check out my previous videos as well. Chances are, if you have a question, I've made a video about it. And also for those of you that might like shorter form content, as long as the app is available, I will be on TikTok. I'm Coach Hall Writes on that platform as well. Before we talk about what exactly AP Lang is, I think it's important that we clarify the difference between AP Lang and AP Lit. Both of these are advanced placement English classes, but they are different. AP Lang is short for AP Language and Composition. This class studies nonfiction. And before you think, oh man, nonfiction is boring, don't dismiss it just yet. So if you're taking the AP Lang exam, you can expect to have two sections, a multiple choice section. This is going to be 45 questions in 1 hour. It's going to account for 45% of your composite score. The composite score is the number between 1 and 5. That's the score that you'll receive usually in July. You take the exam in May. And that's the score that if you're looking for college credit, you can choose to send that score to your future college. In addition to multiple choice, there are also going to be 3 essays on the exam. We call these the FRQs. That stands for free response questions. These account for 55% of your composite score, and you have 2 hours and 15 minutes to write the essays. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's important to remember that the essays are viewed as a draft. The 3 essays on the AP Lang exam are going to be a synthesis essay, a rhetorical analysis essay, and an argument essay. But don't worry, I'll talk more about each of those essays later on in the video. AP Lang tends to be equivalent to Freshman English 1, or some colleges call it Comp 1. AP Lit, however, which is short for AP Literature and Composition, doesn't focus on nonfiction at all. In fact, in that class, you focus on poetry and fiction. Their exam format is relatively similar. On AP Lit, there's also a multiple choice section, and there are 3 essays. But we're here to talk about AP Lang, so let's talk about some of the benefits of the class. Many students are interested in taking AP classes because of the possibility of college credit. Like I said before, if you take the AP exam, you're going to get something called a composite score, and that score could be accepted for college credit. Each college or university is going to set its own criteria for which scores they will accept. And so if you have an idea of which colleges you might want to apply to, go ahead and pick one of those colleges, search for that college's name, and add AP scores after it. Usually when you search for that, it will bring you to a page on that college's website that will tell you each of the AP exams that they accept and what score you need to make in order to earn college credit. And now that we've been mentioning the exam and college credit, I want to be clear about one thing. While it is wonderful to earn college credit for taking an AP class, and yes, the exam is certainly important for the students who choose to take it, it's important to remember that you are more than a test score, and there are numerous other benefits to taking AP Lang beyond college credit. Regardless of whether or not you take the AP exam, and regardless of what your score might be, you're going to be a stronger writer and thinker because you've taken the class. You're going to be more prepared for college because you've taken the class. Another possible benefit of taking AP Lang is that many schools offer a weighted GPA. Now, each school is different, so be sure to double check your school's policies. Now, there are other benefits to taking AP Lang beyond college credit and a boosted GPA. Many students who take AP Lang are juniors. Now, you do not have to be a junior, but many students are. And so because they're juniors, many AP Lang students are also studying for either the SAT or the ACT. There is some overlap between the SAT and ACT questions and AP Lang MCQ. So as you study for AP Lang, chances are you're going to also be getting stronger at those SAT and ACT skills, and vice versa. If you're studying for the SAT or ACT, that can be good practice for some of those AP Lang MCQ as well. Because AP Lang focuses on nonfiction, by taking the class, you're going to be exposed to different types of nonfiction texts like speeches, letters, articles, and more. This is going to be incredibly important as you prepare for college because, quite frankly, unless you're going to be an English major, you're going to be reading a lot of nonfiction. For those of you that want to major in one of the sciences or maybe do something like pre-law, you're not going to be reading a whole lot of poetry or novels. Now, that's not to say that poetry and novels are not good, because they are. But in those other disciplines, you're going to be reading speeches and articles, and you're going to be having to non-pack nonfiction. The skills that you learn in AP Lang will help you do that. I mentioned earlier that taking AP Lang can help you improve your writing and analytical skills. And as part of that, you're going to learn how to conduct research and also how to argue. These are skills that you're going to need for your future college papers. At the time I'm recording this video, it is August of 2024, and earlier this summer, the College Board announced 2 major changes that are happening with the AP Lang exam starting this school year. The first one is that they are reducing the number of answer choices for the AP Lang MCQ. Personally, as a teacher, I welcome this change. In the past, students had 5 answer choices for each question, but moving forward, there will only be 4. This change will make the AP Lang MCQ more closely aligned with what students experience on other AP tests. It'll also make it more streamlined and more comparable to the ACT and the SAT. Also, starting in 2025, the AP Lang exam will be digital only. For the past 2 years, schools have had the choice. They could either offer a digital test or a paper test, but moving forward, it will be digital only. So what exactly is on the exam? Let's start by talking about the MCQ. Remember that there are 45 multiple choice questions, and it accounts for 45% of your composite. So essentially, each multiple choice question is worth 1 point. There are going to be 5 passages. The first 2 passages are reading passages. These passages tend to be longer. The texts tend to be a little bit more dense, and they also tend to have more questions. You can expect between 10 and 13 questions per reading passage. These questions are going to assess your reading comprehension. So for instance, you can expect questions about the rhetorical situation. If you've never heard that term before, don't worry, we'll cover it in AP Lang. But basically it means that they're going to ask questions about the speaker, the audience, the context, or maybe the purpose or message of the passage. You can also expect to see some questions about the function or purpose of certain paragraphs, and also questions about the tone of the passage and perhaps the meaning of some words in context. The last 3 passages of the MCQ section are the writing passages. These passages are going to be a draft. So it's going to be a shorter passage. Usually they're only a couple paragraphs long, and they have fewer questions. So you can expect about 5 to 8 questions per paragraph. These questions are more like editing questions. My students honestly tend to prefer the writing passages because for this section, you're asked questions about creating an effective introduction. There are even questions about how to combine the sentences effectively. Now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the FRQ. So these are the essays. Remember that the essays account for 55% of a student's composite score. On the exam, the essays are scored with a 6-point rubric. Students are eligible for 1 point for a defensible thesis, up to 4 points for evidence and commentary, and then up to 1 point for sophistication. Each of the 3 essays has its own 6-point rubric. They're very similar. Now, you might be wondering how the exams are scored. The exams are scored by AP readers. Each AP reader is assigned to 1 test question. So for instance, if a reader is reading synthesis, they're only looking at synthesis essays. So that means that if you're a student, each of the 3 essays that you write for your AP Lang exam will be scored by a different person, and that person has been trained to score that particular essay. On exam day, students can write the essays in any order, but it's important to remember that the order they're going to be presented in is going to be synthesis. We often call that Q1, rhetorical analysis, that's Q2, and argument, that's Q3. One of the most common questions from students and teachers is, how many body paragraphs do I need for my essay? It's important to remember that these essays are viewed as a draft. So generally speaking, students will either write 2 or 3 body paragraphs. I tell my own students to prioritize quality over quantity. My students tend to write very developed paragraphs, and therefore, in many cases, they only have time for 2 body paragraphs instead of 3. And that's totally okay. However, if you prefer 3 body paragraphs and that works for you, that's okay as well. Another really common question that I'm asked, especially by students, is, do I need a conclusion? So here's the thing. For a timed essay on the AP Lang exam, it's important to remember that conclusions are not a required part of the rubric. So I tell my students on exam day, if you have time to write a conclusion, do so. But if not, focus on the body paragraphs. However, there are times as a teacher where I require a conclusion because I want my students to focus on that skill. So sometimes the requirements for class might be slightly different than the expectations for the exam. Let's talk about synthesis essays. For a synthesis essay, they're going to provide you with 6 to 8 sources. It's usually 6. And at least one of these sources is going to be a visual text. Visual text can include graphs, charts, photos, cartoons, schedules. One of the key things about writing a synthesis essay is that you must cite 3 different sources. This means that if you cite source A, source B, and then source A again, you've only cited 2 sources. And based on the AP rubric, that can really hurt your score. So it's really important that you pick 3 different sources. It doesn't matter which 3, but you need 3 distinct sources. The idea of a synthesis essay is that you want to use the sources to support your argument. A synthesis essay is like a mini research paper. You're using the sources as evidence to back up your claims. You are not just simply summarizing each of the sources. And AP Lang students, as a gentle reminder, I have a whole playlist on my channel about synthesis essays. So as you're going through this school year, if you have questions about citations or how to write a synthesis essay, don't worry, I've got videos that will help guide you through the process. Next up is rhetorical analysis essays. These are honestly my favorite essays to teach, and so I have a ton of videos about rhetorical analysis on my channel. Basically, for a rhetorical analysis essay, you're going to read a provided passage. For the past several years on the exam, they've given students a speech, but it could be another type of nonfiction passage as well, like a letter or even an article, or maybe even an excerpt of a longer work of nonfiction. The prompt is going to give you the information you need about the speaker and the context, and your job is to analyze how a writer makes rhetorical choices to either convey their message, achieve their purpose, or develop their argument. Sometimes the message, argument, or purpose is going to be provided within the prompt. Like, for instance, they might say, her message of perseverance. But other times the prompt might just say, her message. Now, if you've never heard the phrase rhetorical choices before, don't worry, that is definitely something that you will cover in AP Lang class. Basically, a rhetorical choice is something the writer does. This could be that they're comparing or contrasting or repeating certain words. There are several possibilities for rhetorical choices. The final essay on the AP Lang exam is an argument essay. This one is much more open-ended. You're not given sources or a passage. You're just given a pretty short prompt. Sometimes the prompt has a quote that you respond to, and your job is to assert a position on whatever the provided topic is. These essays are somewhat similar to the ACT essay. For this essay, you have to come up with your own evidence. In some sense, that's the hard part of this essay, but it does get easier with practice. Your evidence can be from history, current events, pop culture, even personal experience. Also, one of the most common questions I receive about argument essays, and technically also synthesis essays, is, do I need to address the counter argument? And the short answer is no, it's not required, but doing so can help one's argument. It's also an important writing skill. So some teachers do require that students address the counter argument as part of their essay. Just know that it's not mandatory on the actual AP exam. All right, there you have it. That's what AP Lang is in a nutshell. It's a wonderful class that will help you become a stronger writer and a stronger thinker. If you take the AP exam, there is the possibility for college credit, and the skills that you learn in this class will help you in your future classes. If you found this video helpful, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button. Also, if you're an AP Lang student, don't forget to subscribe and make sure you hit that bell to turn the notifications on. That way you don't miss any future AP Lang videos. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy writing!